Hey, speaking of drama, let's bring in David Nixon on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. David, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation, brother.
Speaking of drama, is that all I do? Is I just create drama? Is that how I'm going to lead into this interview? Is I just create drama?
You were like, there's one beat. You're like TNT. You know drama and played in some dramatic games and some fun ones back in the day. But let's ask you our Twitter questions today. What does BYU football need to do in 2017 to take a step forward as a program?
I think my answer would be you got to be ranked in the top 25.
At any point or at the end?
Say it again?
At any point in the season or at the end?
At the end for sure, because at the end shows you what you've done throughout the season. And frankly, with BYU and Independence, it's going to be tough to lose a couple games in the middle of the season and still be ranked, top 25 at the end. You've got to get, and speaking from experience, right? During our days in the Mountains Conference, we started 1-2 in 06 and 07, and we won out both years from there, and we were ranked in the top 25. But it took time. You got to make your way in there, and if you slip up, any time in there, then the kind of national media discredits you, and there's no way you're going to finish the top 25. So I'd say at the end of the season, when you look back, you have to be in the top 25 at that point.
All right, David, the beating Utah portion of this conversation is something that has been brought up quite a bit. So in your opinion, can BYU take a step forward without beating Utah?
Okay, let me back up here for a second because I came on like 3 weeks ago and we talked about can the season be a success without beating Utah? And I said no. You have to beat Utah in order to have the season be a success. And here's the reason why. I get asked probably a couple times a week, oh, what years did you play? And I tell them 03, 06 through 08. And they instantly go to, both BYU and Utah fans, they both go to, well, which years were those? Referencing the Utah game only. And I have to go on and say, well, 03 was when we lost 3-0 in a blizzard. 06 was the Beck to Harleen. 07 was the 4th and 18. And 08 was Utah's Sugar Bowl year when they had a great team and, we fell short. So that is why I say in order for it to be a successful season, that's all people care about here in Utah. And frankly, I think the fan base, both fan bases, is can you beat your rival? But your question is, can you take a perceived step forward without beating Utah? And I say yes. And that is because if BYU somehow comes out of those first 4 games and they're, say, 2-2, but then can rattle off 9 straight wins, they'll for sure be ranked in the top 25. And going back to my first answer, I think that's how you measure the season and taking a step forward because it's been years now. It's been a while that BYU's been ranked in that top 25. And so I think taking a step forward, begin ranked in the top 25, get some more buzz, and keep building on that.
I said 10 wins, which I think means a ranking because in our stat of the day, David, was this. BYU hasn't had a 5-year drought like this of not winning at least 10 games in a year since 74 to 78. There's always been at least a 10-win season in there every now and then. So BYU plays 13 games this year. How unreasonable is it to think that BYU can win 10 games?
I don't think it's unreasonable, but I don't think if you, like I said, if you lose somewhere in October, November, there's no way you're finishing in the top 25.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. But if you lose early on in the season and then you can rattle off some wins, there's a possibility. But, yeah, the schedule's tough. And going back to that stat, nor do I think BYU has played, at least I know during my time, we didn't play this tough of a schedule.
Sure.
We weren't playing LSU's. We weren't playing Wisconsin's. We play Oregon and things like that in bowl games, but our preseason schedule was Boston College, which they had Matt Ryan at the time, but they weren't anything, they weren't crazy good, like an LSU or Wisconsin. And, we played Tulsa and teams like that and then get ready for Mountains Conference play. So I think that also skews those stats a little bit is the strength of schedule. But, hey, 10-win season, I agree. It's a success, but I think to be able to look at those numbers and see BYU ranked at top 25, I think that for fans is a way to really take a look at the season and see exactly how it panned out.
All right, David, give everybody an idea of what the players are doing right now. We know camp starts in August, but what's happening right now during June and July before camp begins?
Yeah, things are starting to wind down a little bit, and it needs to. These guys have been at it since January. You got all the off-season workouts, which are tough. You got, of course, spring ball, which is tough. Then they've been in classes, spring term. They're taking classes so they can get their scholarship check, and they can stick around and do off-season workouts. But it's now getting to the point where a break is needed, and I think for players and for coaches, everyone kind of takes a break here at the end of June and July to get away. You need to get away. You've had football on your mind for the last last, 10 months straight. So 2 months is needed to kind of take a break. I remember going to my senior year, I went and traveled with my dad. He had some business over in Europe and things. We went on a couple week vacation. You still have to work out. I remember we went to Hawaii and I was running sprints up and down this empty grass field, and I had people like looking at me like I was some weirdo. But
they weren't wrong.
Thank you. But you've got to stay in shape, and so you got to find ways to work out and get creative, because sometimes there aren't the best facilities where you go vacation. Say if you go to Lake Powell, you got to get creative and find ways to stay in shape. But a break is needed. So that's coming up here pretty soon. The guys will all take off, probably go back home where a lot of them are from, or go on vacations to Lake Powell or wherever it may be, and just kind of get away from the game and then kind of get geared up. And it's a fun time, especially with the hot weather. You start to have that feel and that smell that when you walk outside, especially when you come around BYU facilities. There's those turf fields. They have that unique smell that it just kind of gives you that, hey, it's time for fall camp. It's getting closer.
David Nixon, former BYU Cougar and NFL player, is on BYU Sports Nation. The running backs and receivers are an interesting group, David. There's some good young talent in those groups, but they haven't just played a ton or put up stats to be like, all right, this guy's coming back X, Y, Z. What do you think of those two groups and how they'll fare this year for BYU?
I think they'll be successful mostly because you have a lot of talent there. The question mark is, who is the talent, right? And I've harped on this forever. Who is the go-to guy? And when it is 3rd and 3 and you need a running back to get those 3 crucial yards, which Jamal Williams could do, who is that guy? Is it Squally? Is it KJ Hall? I mean, who is it? Is it Trey Dye? It'll be interesting to see who emerges as the go-to guy, who's dependable, who doesn't fumble. And I think that's something with Jamal Williams, us BYU fans, we took for granted. I mean, Jamal just never fumbles, and now we have some younger guys that are going to come in, and you're playing against LSU and Wisconsin, who are going to be stripping at the ball constantly. So no doubt the running backs and the lack of experience is a little worrisome. Same thing with wide receivers. I mean, who is the guy there? Is it Jonah? I mean, and the rest. You look down the rest of the lineup, there's not a lot of go-to guys. I mean, you look at every year, you've got to have that go-to guy when it is a 3rd and 6 or 7. You can count on them running the proper route. You give them the proper check, whatever it may be, depending on the defensive coverage, and you expect them to run the right route and be in the right spot and catch the ball. But in the past, we've had that with Cody Hoffman, Mitch Matthews, those type of guys. This year, who is it? Is it Jonah or is it one of the Shomways? I mean, who's going to emerge as that guy? So no doubt those two during fall camp, someone's going to have to emerge and gain the confidence and trust of Tanner that they can be in the right spot, and not only Tanner but the coaching staff as well. And then you go to the defense side of the ball. Defense, you have a lot of faith in your offensive guys that when you're sucking wind and you're on the bench after after having a 7-8 play series, you're hoping they can get first downs. And so at the same time, those defensive guys are hoping one of those offensive guys emerge because they need rest, and obviously the more points you put on the board, the higher likelihood you have a chance of winning. So the whole team's bought into this, and it's they're all going to be hopefully helping these guys develop and find that go-to guy.
You talked about the running backs and the wide receivers, those two position groups as unproven heading into the season. I think you can add defensive backs, to a certain extent, the quarterback. So of those position groups, who do you think is the most unproven? Who has the most to learn heading into this?
Well, I'll say the quarterback comfortable with. I think obviously Tanner, it's a great spot he's in, so I'm comfortable there. DBs, I mean, you've got a lot of names returning from last year that got crucial time. Micah Hammond, Dian, Hadley, Shelton, Warner. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have had game time experience there. So I don't worry about those two groups in particular. But going back to what I was just saying, I'd say it's either running backs or wide receivers. In a pro-style offense, you have to establish a run. I mean, it's a cliche phrase, but it stands true. And so I think the running back is the squad that I would look at that I think is the most unproven, and they're going to have to prove themselves, and they're going to have to emerge because they're going to have to find a go-to guy. They're going to have to find somebody that can take that burden off of Tanner, and win on first and second down to make those third downs more manageable. So I think running backs is the most unproven, and hopefully they prove us all wrong come fall ball time and come Portland State time.
What do you expect from Tanner Mangum this year? Because the offense is totally different from 2 years ago when he was a freshman. The receivers he had that year were fantastic, were tall, were rangy, were athletic. Tanner Mangum this year in a new offense, what do you expect from him this season?
Well, I've always compared him to John Beck, and if you look at John Beck's numbers, John Beck as a sophomore threw 15 touchdowns. As a junior, he threw 27, so almost doubled it up. He threw for a little over 2,500 yards as a sophomore, threw for 3,700 yards as a junior year. So I think this is the year that Tanner, similar to John Beck, I think this is the year Tanner breaks out. And I think that we see an improvement in his game, mostly because he had a chance to sit underneath Taysom last year and Ty and learn the offense. I mean, he's a student of the game. We know that. He's a bright kid. And so I think this is the year that he really converts it from, his struggles he's had in the past to taking that big step forward, and as a junior, as an upperclassman, now's a chance to go out there and command this team. There's no more, hey, we're going to go, is Taysom going to be healthy next week or the week after? No, it's 100% Tanner's team, and so there's no doubt that he's got the confidence there of the teammates and his coaches. Now he just has to go out there and perform, and I think that's the biggest thing. But I think being able to learn the offense and sit back there in the meetings and ask questions and pick apart it last year is a huge help to him this year going into the season.
Last thing for you. You mentioned Taysom Hill. Obviously, you're pretty close with Taysom. What's the latest with him in Green Bay? Is there anything coming out of there that's looking positive for him heading into to training camp?
We talk pretty often, especially I think he tries to lean on a little bit of my experience and kind of how to navigate this whole NFL deal. But he's just competing. This is a tough time in the NFL because you don't really get a ton of feedback. The coaching staff, they're still evaluating all the players, and so there's not depth charts they post. I mean, there's a natural depth chart that you fall into, but that can move depending on the day. And so it's just one of those things where he's out competing. That's where he thrives. He thrives in those type of conditions when he has to go out there and compete. And so he's just plugging away. They're off now. He's actually back here in Utah for the next month or so until he has to head back out there for their camp. But all in all, it's been a positive, off-season time with the Packers, and OTAs have been good, and I think he's pretty optimistic. So, the feedback from the Packers is with Aaron Rodgers come preseason game time, they don't really need to play him, right? He's a proven guy. So that opens up time for Hundley, the backup quarterback, and Callahan and Taysom to come in and get some reps. And so, once again, it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, and it'll be exciting. I actually plan to go to the last preseason game and watch him out there in Green Bay, so we'll see how it goes.
It helps that Jamal Williams and Colby Pearson are on the squad as well. That'll be a ton of fun to watch. David, we appreciate the time, man.